U.S. President Donald Trump's stated plan to take control of Venezuela's oil industry is raising questions about the impact on our energy sector. During his visit to Paris this morning, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked about this, and he says he's confident the sector is going to remain competitive.
Canadian oil will be competitive because it is low risk, clearly low risk, low cost, the marginal costs. There's been huge progress in getting down the costs, and low carbon.
But Canada's oil sector is already feeling the pressure as shares for some of our largest producers took a hit. The sudden removal of former leader Nicolas Maduro sending shockwaves through global energy markets. So for a closer look at how this will impact Canada's oil sector, I'm joined this morning by Al Salazar. He's the head of macro oil and gas research at Enverus. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
First of all, could you explain what Prime Minister Carney meant by ours is more secure and the statements he made about our energy sector remaining competitive?
Well, our energy sector has been through a lot over the past, I guess, 10 years. I mean, we went through the shale war, and speaking to some of the companies, it's been through a lot of rationalization and cost cutting. So it's lean and mean. It can withstand a lot of low oil price environments, and certainly this is a risk that's always been there. In Venezuela, we've competed historically with Venezuelan crude at the U.S. Gulf Coast. So that's what I think Prime Minister was talking about in terms of being well tested, and in terms of low risk. Well, relative to being able to produce and consistently, that's one thing, and I think that's what he's referring to with regards to the consistency.
Good to have your explanation on that. Listen, let's outline some of the concerns that people are feeling. Canada sends the majority of our crude oil to the U.S. In fact, in 2024, Canada's crude oil and natural gas exports accounted for $160 billion. Most of that heads to the Midwest of the U.S. How big of a hit could we face from this latest move of, the U.S. potentially taking over or dominating Venezuela's oil exports?
Well, I think you mentioned that most of the crude that we produce goes to the Midwest. I don't think that's at risk. I mean, out of the 4 million barrels a day that we produce or ship to the U.S., about 2.5 goes to the Midwest. But there is a component, maybe about 500,000 barrels a day, 500,000, that makes its way to the Gulf Coast. And I think that's something that may be under competition if Venezuelan crude ever makes its way back into the markets. Now, one thing that's interesting that I don't think that a lot of folks are talking about right now is Venezuela exports a good chunk of its production, which is just under 1 million barrels a day, to China at a discounted price, maybe $20 below market. Now, I don't think President Trump's going to agree with that deal in the long term. So it just makes sense that some of those Venezuelan barrels that went to China go back and gets directed to the Gulf Coast, and that could be in direct competition with Canadian crude that's already there.
The issue that came up a lot yesterday was the issue of timing. There are people who say, look, this is too far off for us to be concerned. There are others, mostly politicians, who say this needs to be taken care of now. It needs to be a priority. Trump is saying that the U.S. oil companies are going to run the industry in Venezuela, is going to pay for it. I want to remind everybody exactly what he said. He said, we're going to have our very large U.S. oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. How would that work, and how long would it take? Does that mean U.S. companies taking over the wells that are already drilled? Does that mean drilling their own? Because that matters for timing.
It does, and it first requires security, and I don't think there's any security right at the moment. So it's almost, people I've seen estimates, half a decade. I guess the analog that I kind of referred to when asked this is looking at Iraq. Now, when Saddam Hussein was eliminated, it took them about 10 years to bring Iraqi production online. So I think that's the type of time frame we're looking at. Now, it could be expedited, but look at the environment for oil right now. We're, I think in the high 50s for WTI, Brent's in the low 60s, and U.S. operators are not flush in terms of optimistic in terms of being able to invest in capital projects at the moment. So I think it's going to take some time, and it's not overnight. But I will say, I will point to the fact that there is existing Venezuelan production, which could be a situation where that could impact Canadian crude.
We've got time for one more issue. The U.S. has sanctions on Venezuela for decades. Canada has benefited from those sanctions. If Trump removes them because the U.S. is running the sector, what does that do to our oil sector? How do we remain competitive?
Absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, I mean, we've got, just all that crude that used to go to China. It makes sense to go to the Gulf Coast. And if you think about what the Venezuelan producer would take at the Gulf Coast, it's probably going to be a lot less than what a Western Canadian producer is going to take at the Gulf Coast. So there's that old adage that more supply at a certain point is certainly going to be a downward pressure in terms of pricing. And from a Western Canadian producer, $1 or $2 less what they receive in terms of their revenue because of this is meaningful. And I think that's what could impact, and that's why we had the impact on Canadian equities yesterday, Canadian oil equities. It sold off, and I think that's part of it.
Al Salazar, head of macro oil and gas research at Enverus. Thanks for joining us this morning.
No problem.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.